Hello, why would you make a cup with a rounded bottom? It's a question that arises with two objects that I'm going to look at in this particular session, and both objects are made of gold, which makes them special to begin with. Now, metalworking was introduced to Britain just under 4,500 years ago, chiefly bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, used for tools and weapons. It begins the period we now call the Bronze Age, but it's also the time when the first gold objects are made in Britain. And what is so special about gold? It's one of the few metals that occur naturally in its pure form, but it is very rare. It is extremely malleable. It can be drawn into very fine wire and beaten into the thinnest of sheets. It's versatile and it's very easy to work with, and then it has those eternal properties. It's naturally shiny, it doesn't corrode, and it's the same colour as the sun. This is the Ringlemere gold cup. It was found in 2001 by a metal detectorist, Cliff Bradshaw, who was searching a ploughed out barrow on Ringlemere Farm. It's in East Kent, it's near Sandwich, and the barrow didn't show on the ground, but crop marks could be seen from aerial observation. And he reported the find to the local finds liaison officer with the Portable Antiquities Scheme, and it was declared treasure by the coroner under the terms of the Treasure Act 1996 and acquired by the British Museum for £270,000. Very, very difficult to date, but around 1700 BC, so getting into the middle of the Bronze Age period. It's a time when metalworking is pretty well established. And the site was then excavated by Canterbury Archaeological Trust, and they found that the barrow had been originally surrounded by a ditch. And although there were other barrow cemeteries around with burials also ploughed out, covering different periods, there was no sign of a burial where the cup had been found. So it looked to be something of a ritual deposit, a votive offering, and crushed by the action of heavy agricultural machinery continually going over the top of the barrow. The cup is made of a single sheet of gold. It would have been hammered from a single ingot and probably hammered over a wooden form. The handle was made separately in a strip, and then it's been riveted on with lozenge-shaped washers. It's quite small. It's about 4.5 inches high, and it has this nice flared rim with a dotted decoration around it. It's very similar to an example that was found at Rillaton, in Rillaton Barrow, which is on the eastern edge of Bodmin Moor. This was found in 1837, and under the terms of the old Treasure Trove Act, which was covered it at the time, then this became the property of the Crown, and it was donated to the British Museum from the Royal Collection in the late 1930s. It's slightly smaller than the Ringlemere cup. This is just under 4 inches high, but the shape of these cups and the decoration is very reminiscent of beaker pots. We saw some of those in part 5, pottery that was introduced around about 4,500 years with a new culture that enters Britain at the time, beaker culture. But the shape is very similar, as is the decoration, because the beaker pots were decorated with horizontal bands, and that's almost mirrored by the corrugation of the gold cups. Now, the barrow at Rillaton was a grave barrow. There was a burial inside and other grave goods, dagger, beads and pottery. So in this instance it was definitely grave goods. But building a barrow is a pretty significant undertaking, very labour intensive, so it's only done to commemorate the most important individuals, and whoever is buried with this gold cup is going to be very high status, as evidenced A by the barrow and then B by the gold cup. But let's go back to that question. Why have a cup with a rounded bottom? There are about half a dozen gold examples known from the same period. Those two we have from Britain, and there are others from France and Germany and Switzerland. There are some other silver examples also date from the same period. But because they wouldn't stand up on a flat surface, perhaps they once had a stand that they fitted in, maybe something made of wood that was with them and hasn't survived. Or, once filled, was it the intention that they would never be put down until they'd been drained, and when you did put them down it would show they had been drained? Or perhaps they weren't meant to be put down because they were handed around, but they're not going to hold very much, so it would be a sip each. But there's plenty of evidence for ceremonial feasting in prehistory. We have pits with animal bones and food remains on ritual sites that show people gathered. And at Chiseldon in Wiltshire in 2004, Wessex archaeology uncovered 17 iron cauldrons, a little bit later than the Bronze Age period, of course, but these would have held, well, it's estimated something like 150 gallons of, well, shall we call it stew, whatever they were making. So clear evidence of ceremonial feasting here. And we can imagine that when communities have come together for activities like building a barrow, or maybe digging ditches around a hill foot, maybe even things like harvesting, then there would be celebrations afterwards for the whole of the community that's been involved. And maybe these cups were involved in one of those celebrations. Both the cups are now in room 47 at the British Museum. Now next time I'm going to look at two treasure hoards from Staffordshire. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is published.